I feel like the relationship status of movies and video games has been, complicated, to put it lightly. Most film adaptations of games have consistently turned out to be dog turds, and the same could be said for most game adaptations of movies. This isn't necessarily just the product of bad production or development, although that's a big part of making a dog turd. It's the product of the two mediums being so drastically different that a lot of what originally made a film or game special vanishes in the transformation process. This isn't to say that it's impossible to make a decent film using some themes or characters from a video game like Tomb Raider. Hunky girl with a ponytail, having a grand old time, yeah, I'll watch a movie of that. I mean, the new games basically wannabe movies anyway, so fuck it. And on the flip side, adapting a movie to be a game is just insane when you think about it. Games can be so many things, but when translating a film to game, developers usually just make a platformer where you collect shit and your reward is a cutscene. So you might as well just watch Monsters Inc. instead of bugging your brother to let you play this piece of shit game on his PS2. But then, you get those gems. Those games that only take the bits and pieces from a movie that the developers knew would actually make for a fun and interesting game. Best example of this, Spider-Man 2. When making that, Treyarch knew that being awkward at a fancy party as Peter Porker wouldn't make for a fun game, so they left that shit out. But they did see that, hey, being able to swing around on anything, that would be super fun. Okay, we gotta make a big ol' open world that's fun to flip around in. Take New York for a spin. Okay, so being late to Mary Jane's play and doing a fucking quick time event to tie your shoes isn't super fun, but delivering pizzas? Yeah, that'd be super fun in a Spider-Man video game. And we can make a bangin' ass tune for that too. Oh man, Richardson, this game is gonna be baller ass. And it was. It was quite baller ass. So I get that after saying all of this, a couple hot boys out there might be thinking, why the fuck is this dude going on about games and movies breeding poorly right before he talks about making a movie into a game? My point is that movies and games can have some beautiful blossoming relationships, but getting to that point requires acknowledging and respecting the differences between the two mediums. 28 Days Later is one of my favorite movies and I respect the shit out of it, but while watching it earlier in the week, I could not stop thinking about how so many scenes could beautifully translate to game mechanics in an open world zombie game. Yeah, I know there's absolutely no shortage of zombie video games. If you walk into a GameStop and say, yeah, I'm looking for a game with zombies, 1,000 game cases will all turn around and be like, what is up, wiener man? But mark my turds, this potential game would be unlike any of these other scrubs. Except these two. It'll probably take some stuff from these two. To put it simply, if you're familiar with my series Games the Shebang, 28 Days Later, the video game, is basically what would happen if Left 4 Dead 2 met Breath of the Wild and Cabo on spring break. One of the best qualities of 28 Days Later, one that is just prime for video gamification, is the opening of the film. Also, if you haven't seen 28 Days Later, at this point, I'm gonna start spoiling the shit out of it. So after an intro showing how the infection starts, Jim's story begins in a hospital where he wakes up from a coma. And then you see his wiener. Unbeknownst to young Jimberly, in the last 28 days, zombies have taken over London, and most people are either dead or infected. And if you remember anything about the film, it should be that the zombies are all really fucking fast. This is the movie that kind of put that idea on blast, fucking bars, and for a video game it's great. Fast zombie hordes are a lot scarier than vanilla flavored ones, and they're more fun to fight too. Anyways, the fantastic first act of the movie would also make for an amazing opening in a game because much like how Breath of the Wild begins, once Jim/Link leaves the hospital/hyperbolic time chamber, you just go. I love this kind of opening where a game just throws you in and you gotta figure shit out, and letting a player wander a vast, detailed, but most importantly, seemingly empty city right from the get-go is one hell of an intro to a game. From this point on, the structure of the film and game will begin to differ depending on the player's actions, but many of the situations that occur in the film are likely outcomes of what the player chooses to do. To help give my gameplay ideas some structure, let me explain the bullet points and goals of this imaginary game. The game world of Abandoned London would be big, like Rockstar level big. The goal of the game, like the movie, is to just survive by any means necessary. If you remember the end of the film, another 28 days pass and the camera shows that the zombies are dying. Hooray, our heroes survived the trial. The game would have the same goal with a Majora's Mask-esque type countdown of 28 in-game days, except in this game, you want the days to be over, because if you die, you're done. Permadeath style. You can go wherever you want on the map depending on what you think is the safest. The player could even have a radio in a basic map like Frank does in the movie, so if you listen for a signal and pinpoint the location on your map, you can try and find your way there. It would be up to you to judge which humans could be allies or enemies, so maybe you don't want to follow every signal you get. But if you do manage to take out some rival human enemies, your reward could be like more powerful weapons like guns and explosives. The game world has rules just like the film. You need food to get by in the day, and depending on what food you eat, your performance will differ. In the movie, Jim only eats candy for a while and gets a headache while climbing some stairs. The game could have a similar mechanic, punishments to vision or stamina depending on what you found to eat. You don't want to travel at night, so in between days of exploring, searching for supplies, and running away from spooky priests, you might want to set up camp somewhere and wait the night out. But remember, zombies are attracted to any light source, so it's important to choose your safe haven wisely. Whether that means using an abandoned shop in the subway, clearing a house, or fighting your way to the top of a building, what you do and how secure you do it will determine your safety in the night. I know I keep bringing up Breath of the Wild, but it's just such a good reference point to draw from when it comes to making an imaginary open world game, especially when I realized how its idea of multiplicative gameplay could translate beautifully to 28 Days Later, the movie, the game, based on the novel Push by Sapphire. In Zelda, most objects can interact with others, meaning that fire can turn a weapon into a torch, meat can get frozen by ice arrows, girls only talk to you if you cross-dress, you get the idea. 28 Days Later not only showed me its gameplay ingredients while watching it the other day, but it already showed me a couple sweet ways you could combine stuff to survive. At the beginning of the movie, when Jim first leaves the hospital, he picks up a plastic bag and uses it to take more soda cans with him. I love that idea of actually having to use a backpack or bag to carry things so that scavenging takes more thought than just mindlessly picking shit up. But wait, it gets even better. Not only does having a generic bag item in a game mean you can pick shit up with it, but depending on what you put in that bag, all of a sudden you just made a fucking weapon. That's right, in the movie, Jim uses a bag full of Pepsi cans to beat down a zombie priest. It turns out Pepsi did save the world from religious oppression after all. That's right, kids, I got topical jokes too. 28 Days' version of multiplicative gameplay wouldn't necessarily be the same as Zoldan's, but the idea of being able to combine whatever resources together to make shit got me super excited. Okay, so you just found a glass bottle to store some water in it. Earlier in the day you found a rag, and the previous day you found a broken down truck and siphoned some gas out of it just in case you were to find a working car. But what happens if I combine all this shit instead? Dude, you just made a Molotov, at least in video game rules. You lit a zombie on fire, lead him and his friends back to a gas station, now they're all lit, just like spring break at Cabo. These are just a couple of examples, but the gameplay of 28 Days could go even deeper than crafting or combat, implementing some of the stealth shit that happens towards the end of the movie. When Jimbo Slice is taken out of the bad boy mansion to be executed, Diddle Boy fucks up and Jim gets a chance to dive into a pile of dead bodies, blending in with the deceased, confusing the soldier boys. I love that idea. Being able to use piles of dead zombies to hide from enemies, maybe even making your own pile and then diving in it to hide from more oncoming zombies, shit is sweet. Another idea I loved is when Jim makes it back to the mansion and purposely sets loose the imprisoned zombie to wreak havoc upon the bad boys. The zombie starts a party in the house, and soon almost every soldier is infected or dead. In a video game, strategically unleashing a zombie upon human enemies would be amazing. I don't know how exactly you could imprison a zombie to do your bidding in this game, but maybe you could do it Michonne style and just have some zombie cattle. I don't know. I'll think about that some more and probably never get back to you. Even on a basic level, there is something about how the film presents abandoned London that, for as terrifying as it is, I never want to leave it. The movie was even shot on low-quality handheld digital cameras to accommodate the short time allowed to shoot the empty streets, but the homemade look of the movie makes it feel all the more grounded and lived in, and being able to translate even a little bit of that to an interactive game world would be something extraordinary. 28 Days Later exists confidently on its own as one of the best horror movies ever made, and a poorly made video game adaptation could potentially tarnish the source material. But a detailed, terrifying, and creative open-world adaptation of 28 Days Later could be one of the best zombie games ever made, at least in my imagination. Thanks for watching my video. If you'd like to throw some more ideas at me or tell me mine are stupider and dumb, leave a comment below or get at me on Twitter. If you liked the video, go ahead and gouge out the eyes of that like button, and if you'd like to hear more from me in the future, go ahead and scrawl a bloody note on the wall as a reminder to check back next week, or you could just subscribe. If you really liked the video, you could support my channel on Patreon, and special shout out to Ben Dinklage, Josh Hammy Hamilton, and Chef Boyardee's Nuts for their very generous contributions to Hot Boy Nation. Thank you so much. Send me pictures of your dog on Snapchat, and I'll see you next time. Dog bless.